All right, so our second video here this week is on footwear impressions, and just some interesting little numbers, some things to think about. That most of our crime scenes, probably up to 80%, are going to have footwear impression evidence at them. Well, why is that? Well, you gotta walk. We can't fly through crime scenes, so our suspects probably are walking through them. Now, people can do things to obliterate their footwear impressions, so that's why some scenes don't have them, or some surfaces really do not hold footwear impressions very well, so they don't get left behind. But there's probably there at least 80% of our scenes for the most part. Versus when you think about it, at most probably 35% of our scenes have fingerprint evidence. People wear gloves, people do things to make sure that they wipe off fingerprints, and they don't think about their shoe prints. Keep this in mind though. Likewise, we barely collect shoe prints at 5% of our crime scenes, and yet we're trying to collect fingerprints as many scenes as possible. Really, we only collect about at 10 to 15% of our scenes usable prints. Again, people wear gloves, and they do things to obliterate the prints, so while we are looking for them at a vast majority of our scenes, we only collect fingerprints at 10 to 15% of our scenes, versus the 5% for our shoe wear impressions. Interesting. Wonder why that is. Well, think about it. How many pairs of shoes do you own? Versus how many sets of fingerprints do you have? You have your fingerprints that are stuck in your body. Shoes, I can change shoes. Me personally, I've got 3 different pairs of gym shoes, depending on the kinds of workouts I'm doing. I've got 2 different pairs of dress shoes, and I've got 2 or 3 other shoes. So I have like 10 pairs of shoes. And of course too, when my gym shoes get too bad, they become my lawn mowing shoes and shoes that I can get dirty in. And, I buy a new pair of gym shoes. So it is what it is. And I imagine that there's people in this class. I've pulled my classroom classes and I've heard up to 60 pairs of shoes from some of my students. You commit a crime in one pair of shoes and you're wearing a different pair of shoes at the time of your arrest. It's a little harder to make that match. Now, our shoe print evidence comes in 2 forms, very similar to our regular impression evidence with tool marks, with the compressions and the striations. We call these impressions and prints, though. Impressions would be the compressions where you're stepping down into mud, dirt, something soft, and you create a 3-dimensional print. A simple print is when you get something on your shoes: dust, blood, mud, water. And when you step on a surface, you leave behind that, so where's my cursor? There it is, that bloody print, or in the dust, you leave that dusty print. So great little visual, love showing this, where we end up kind of, having the visible print and the plastic print and what we call latent prints too, which are ones where they are not easy to see. So here we have somebody who's, walking in the mud. They leave some nice impressions, some 3-dimensional prints. Walking in the grass, they probably don't leave anything that might be there, it's hard to say, but they pick up some wetness on their feet. And so now here on this desktop and on the broken glass, we've got a beautiful visible print coming across the carpet, floor. They potentially are really leaving much that's able to be seen. It could be some latent images there, but harder to say. But they pick up some dirt on the next floor, they kick in a door, they leave a nice visible print on the door, they leave a nice visible print on the tile floor. That then becomes a little more latent, harder to see. As they go across the carpet, it's probably going to be a little more latent, harder to see. Then, our burglar is confronted by the homeowner, so they kill somebody. They step in the blood, so they leave some visible prints, maybe some semi-visible, semi-latent prints. Step in some oil, leave, 1 foot is in the oil, so it is detectable, visible print. The other one is going to be more of a latent print. Make sense? Cool. Hopefully at least it does. Good example. So we had a case. We have a guy who is peeping Tom. He's going to an apartment complex near to the college campus, and he is looking in the windows of some young ladies as they are dressing. The building has kind of got like a walkout basement, kind of, it's built into a hillside. So these ladies, even though they're on the first floor apartments, where their apartments windows are at the back of the apartment for the bedroom, they're up high. And so some of them were not pulling the shades as well as they probably should have been, because from that elevation, you shouldn't be able to see in the window. And from where the view into, a wooded area, you shouldn't be able to see into that window. And so they were, only kind of half-ass pulling the shades, pardon my French. And eventually a couple of young ladies thought that they were being peeped on, and they've been calling the police a couple times. They became a little more diligent about pulling the shades, but they still could see that shadow, that outline of somebody outside their window. And we eventually caught this guy because here is the air conditioning unit by the one window of the one victim. And take a look right here. And I'll point them out to make it easier to see. We have some shoe prints. And we kind of had a suspect in mind, and it was a local business owner who had a business a little ways away from this apartment complex where this was going on. And some staff had raised some concerns about their boss. And so one of our day shift officers went to talk to him. And sure enough, the shoes were the same as what I had here. And these were a special shoe for this workplace. And so it was a very, very unique tread, and we were able to match it up. Well, how do we match up treads? You've got a pair of Converse All-Stars. And as you can see, you've got like a chunk missing from the tread where like a piece of glass or a stone had been stepped on. You've got a couple cracks. And when we take a look at an impression left at a crime scene, and that was collected, here you've got this chunk missing, you've got these cracks that line up and they all match. Even these that don't have an arrow, look at this one. You got this L-shaped crack, and right below it you've got these two parallel cracks. Look at that, L-shaped crack, two parallel cracks. Pair of Converse All-Stars, size, whatever they are, with these cracks, what are the chances of two people in the universe having them? Pretty slim. Photograph is the big thing. A lot of our shoe print impressions are hard to collect, and so we ruin them in collecting from time to time too. So good photographs is what we're looking for. Get the camera up on a tripod. We have specialty tripods where we can actually flip the tripod upside down, point the camera straight down at the impression. Notice the little cable going off here. That is to get the flash off the camera and have the flash make what's called an oblique lighting going across the thing, which creates shadows, which makes it much easier for us to see. Get that camera looking straight down at that shoe print, not across the shoe print, straight down at it. Don't forget your scale, and remember what we said before. You know, I can't read the scale like this. It's got to be like this. Can't be like this. Has to be like this. So we have the scale here, the camera here, the footprints here, and we're looking right down at it, taking a good picture. Like this. Here we go. Great picture. These days I would suggest we don't use construction rulers, use your forensic rulers, but here we have a great picture of a footprint on a nice wooden floor, dusty footprint. You can see that thing beautifully. All right, so some of our lifting techniques, gelatin lifters. We have some sticky materials that are kind of a thicker gelatin material, and we can very easily take lifts of prints with these gelatin lifters from a tile floor, from other surfaces, and what we end up with is a nice reproduction. Electrostatic dust lifters are very popular. There's a couple different systems out there. This is one of our more modern ones. Simple to use. Years ago we had like this briefcase with all these wires and clips and things that you had to do. Very complicated device. Now, you know, 9-volt battery and a little box, turn on the power, crank up the power. What we're doing is putting down a sheet of what's called mylar. It's kind of like what those balloons at the hospital is made out of. And you run an electrical current through it, and the dust that's on the table will now cling to the sheet, and when you flip it over, here's a perfect footprint. You see some other speckles of dust, but that shoe print is perfectly right there. That casting is one of the big things that a lot of people think about. Casting is still very popular. Got to have the right equipment, a couple pounds of dental stone. You know, usually we kind of pre-mix these in bags. You can buy them pre-mixed also. You need some kind of stirring stick, water, some kind of form, something to put the cast into. We like to put hairspray down first. Makes the print come out better. And when we have snow and stuff too, there's other materials, some other chemicals that we can use that we put down in the shoe print first, and then we pour in our casting compound. But take a look, without hairspray, the cast is kind of icky. When you spray it down with hairspray, you can actually read the brand name of this boot. These are two boots side by side. One was sprayed with hairspray, the other wasn't. We poured them at the same time in class, and you know, you can see the difference. Believe it or not, you can also cast in mud and wet areas. So we put our form down and we sift the casting material into the shoe print, and you still get a beautiful print. They look, you know, just the same as these. So, you know, when you're at a crime scene, typically what you end up doing is mixing it together and pouring it in the crime scene. But when it's in a bunch of muddy, wet water, what you end up is you just let the water that's already in the scene be your water, and you just sift our powder casting compound into it, and it will create your cast for you. And it works just perfectly fine. All right, so there is our good overview of shoe prints and footwear impression evidence. And next up will be trace evidence, if I remember correct.